tell us what's going on at the State House, all for the remainder of the session. Thanks.
I think they're still trying to set up. Mr. Myers, you think y'all will be ready? Okay, you ready? Okay. Because we don't want Representative to start talking, then he gets stuck. I mean, yeah, we're going to allow you to go ahead and get your plate, and then we'll come back and Representative Arthur will come up. So we'll start with our guest tables first.
Okay. Did you tell me District 32? What district did you say?
I think it's 91. Oh, let me look
91?
again. I think it's no, ma'am. 93, District 93.
Okay, 93. Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. And for those who didn't look at the chat, Chris just said, looks like we got a few minute break here while they grab their food real quick, but don't go anywhere. So we're good. For those who don't have the chat function. So.
Russellville lot, 93. Okay. All righty. Now let's see. Okay, now I see what I want to see. Thank you so much. It's 93. Okay. Yeah, he started in 2013. To the present. Oof. Hot. Shoot. No wonder I couldn't find it. no wonder. Okay, I got it.
Good. Awesome. Glad you found it. Glad we finally found it. It's hard to find them sometimes.
I'm spelling his name wrong. No wonder I couldn't find it. I had that. Okay. I'm Calhoun, Lexington.
So much leftovers from Easter dinner. What I really need to do is come out here and eat something else instead of eating my leftovers.
Okay, y'all, I think we're gonna go ahead and get started. I think everyone's had an opportunity to fill up their plates with all of that delicious barbecue. So now it's my goal to make sure you don't fall asleep after you eat. I know that can be a challenge sometimes after you get some good barbecue in you, but let me just start by thanking everyone first and foremost for coming. That's the biggest thing I want you to take away from tonight is that I am appreciative of the fact that you're here. Chris, I know that you've got folks that are watching online, so I want to tell them thank you as well for just participating in the process. You know, I think far too often there's a lot of apathy that sets in when you start talking about politics. It's very easy to get frustrated with what you see. It's very easy to get frustrated as a Democrat in South Carolina because a lot of times we find ourselves outnumbered and over-talked. So I understand that very well, but it's important that we not let that happen. You know, it's important that we continue to participate in the process, to try to make sure that our voices are heard, not to be dismayed or not be allowed to let folks intimidate us into not participating. So that's why these types of events are important. So it's great to be in Lexington County. It's fantastic to be able to look out and see so many friends. Chris, thanks for the introduction. You know, like Chris said, we go way back to Swansea High School, playing sports together, sometimes getting in trouble together, but learning about life. And I consider you one of my dear friends. I hope you know that. Ms. Margaret, so good to see you. Another dear friend, mother from Swansea as well. So we're just a close-knit community. So Lexington, it's great to be able to be here with new people that I haven't had the opportunity to meet before. And that's really the whole point of tonight is trying to make sure that I'm able to get around and have conversations with the folks that I represent so that I can hear from each and every one of you about the things that are important. I want to know what you think I can do to be a better representative for you. Because at the end of the day, that's something that I hold very dear and I want to continue to be able to do. And I want to be able to continue to do it well. And I think the only way you do that is by talking with folks. So like I said, I know a lot of folks in the room, but I don't ever like taking for granted that you know me. So I want to try to just give you a brief snapshot of who I am and where I come from. And then we're going to get into the whole kind of meat of the presentation, which will be kind of your participation and you telling me what interests you and those questions that you would like to ask of me. But like I said, my name is Russell Ott, and I am very proud to be able to represent House District 93. So for those of you that might not know, House District 93 is all of Calhoun County, and then it's portions of Orangeburg and Lexington counties as well. And so it's been that makeup now for quite some time, but a lot of you might have heard about redistricting that took place recently where we redrew all of the district lines. And so I actually increased in size in Lexington from what I've had in the past. So I was talking with some folks over here. I actually go into Pine Ridge a little more than I ever did, but basically, Highway 321 is the line through Lexington County. So everything on kind of the I-26 side of 321 is in the district, and a lot of what is on the other side of 321 will be outside of the district. But that goes through Gaston and through Swansea. And then again, portions of Orangeburg. So it's a rural district. I'll talk about that tonight. I know it doesn't seem that way when we're sitting here and, you know, what I consider to be the city portion of Columbia or the greater Columbia area. But for the most part, it's a rural district, which is why it's so large. You know, it goes from basically right here all the way to almost to Santee and Ellery in Orangeburg County. So a lot of land mass, and a lot of rural parts and small towns, which is where I'm from. But anyway, like I said, I grew up, I was born and raised in Calhoun County. Been there my whole life outside of about 4.5 years at Clemson University. When I went up there and got my undergraduate degree from Clemson, and then came right back home and started working, and went to school at Carolina for my graduate degree, but born in Calhoun County. And, you know, if you're going to know me, you got to understand who my parents were, because they played such an important role in my life. And I don't think any more so than my mom, that Chris referenced when he was given the introduction. My mom was a public school teacher. And so that has pretty much shaped a lot of, you know, who I am and what I believe in and what I'm passionate about. But it also, because of the fact that she was a public school teacher and where she taught, it shaped a lot of who I am. And so I say that because I traveled. You know, we went from school to school. Started off in Calhoun County when she was teaching there. Went to elementary school. She moved over to OW, Orangeburg Wilkinson in Orangeburg. So we followed her there, and I went to middle school at Bennett, which is now William J. Clark. And then she moved to Swansea to start teaching. And so my 4 years of high school were spent at Swansea High School. So, you know, I followed her around. Wherever she was teaching is where we kind of went. And so, you know, there's pros and cons, right, with everything. One of the pros to that was I got to meet so many different people in that surrounding area. Whenever people ask where I'm from, I always say, you know, I'm from Calhoun County, but I can claim 4 different towns and cities because we are literally like 12 minutes away from St. Matthew, Swansea, North, and Orangeburg. We're right in that middle area. And so she was working in that orbit, and so we would follow. And so I met a lot of different people, and I have relationships. One of the cons were I never spent my entire childhood with any one group of kids, you know, and I'm a little bit envious of that because, you know so many people, they start in kindergarten and they have that relationship and that friendship with individuals all the way through high school. So, you know, I didn't get that, but man, I met a lot of awesome people along the way. And so, you know, by her being a public school teacher and just having that kind of foundation, you know, that's first and foremost in my mind is improving public education in the state. And I don't think that there's an issue or a problem that we can talk about tonight that you can bring up that I can't point back to and say it can't be solved by a better education for our children. Doesn't matter what it is. If you want to talk about healthcare disparities across the state, if you want to talk about income disparities, it all starts with education. And if we can improve our educational system, our public educational system in the state, we can improve so many other things along the way. So that's, you know, very important to me. My dad also had a major role on me. We grew up on the farm. So he's been a farmer his whole life. And so that, you know, kind of secondarily it was passed on down to me. It got in my blood at an early age. And so agriculture and working on the farm has been very important. He also was involved when I was a young person in, you know, kind of that political arena. And I learned very early on, he instilled in me also, you know, that you got to give back and that you got to get involved, and that public service is something that we should all participate in, regardless of what that looks like. And that can look like a whole host of things. It doesn't mean that you gotta run for office, and get elected, just to be able to give back and be involved with public service. But do something to try to leave things better than the way you found it. And there's always someone that we need to give credit to that's helped us get to where we are along the way, and that you've got to provide those types of opportunities to other people coming behind us. And so number one, just kind of having that work ethic. We started off, I still think back and don't know how they did it. We had a woman that was from Greer that didn't know anybody, that got brought to Calhoun County and was a public school teacher, not making much at all. And then you had a guy that decided he wanted to be a farmer. Didn't have anything left in him. We didn't have a lot at all. And I watched them kind of stick together and build something that I feel like is very impressive and along the way. Now they got 5 grandchildren, and they both been done very well for themselves. So, they've instilled in me that work ethic that I think that, sometimes it's not easy, but you keep striving, and a lot of times, it ultimately pays off. And so I can't thank them enough for what they meant to me. And then subsequently, I can't thank my 2 boys, my 2 sons, Lawson and Bryce, who are a huge part of my life. They're 14 and 13 right now. And so I can't talk about them without having this big smile on my face. I want to talk about something that brings you so much joy and so much frustration all at the same time. Those are my 2 sons, and I'm sure that the parents out there can attest to that. It has just been a blessing. They go to school over at Pleasant Hill Middle School. So they're here in Lexington, going to school in Lexington 1, and doing good and participating in sports. But man, the challenges, I can't imagine. I think every generation says that to a certain degree. Like, we had it so much better, and I can't imagine what it would be like growing up in today's society. I heard my parents say that about us and my generation, but man, I just, it's tough being a kid nowadays. It really is. With so many distractions, with so many other things that are placed on them. The biggest one being, we could always escape, whatever you might have been dealing with in school that was hard, whether you had someone you didn't get along with, and so you had to put up with them or whatever it was, you could always escape when you went home, right? And you might not have to pick it back up or deal with it again until the next day. Kids nowadays, they usually don't have that benefit. With the cell phones and social media and everything else, it follows them, and I think that we've got to understand that there's challenges right now that our young folks have to deal with that we didn't understand. And so, we were having one of these types of events over in Calhoun County, and one of the guys stood up and said, man, if we just bring back, spankings or paddlings, then everything would be okay. And I get that, and I remember talking with him and saying, yeah, there's got to always be consequences, but we also have to understand what's going on in our younger folks' generation and what they're having to deal with. And we've got to meet them on their level. And I think that kind of goes for a lot of different issues, not just with kids, not just with public education, but man, if we could just slow down and be willing to listen to folks more, we could really get along with it. It's so we're in a society now where I think everybody feels like I've got to talk over someone else, or if they don't agree with me, then they're an enemy. Just because we don't agree on every single issue doesn't mean that we're necessarily enemies. It just means that we have a different perspective. We might absolutely have the same end goal, just different ways of approaching how to get there. That's okay. That's actually a good thing. I was working on a piece of legislation today. I thought I had it completely figured out, trying to provide access for women to be able to go and get contraceptives at their pharmacy instead of having to go and get a prescription from a doctor. We can talk about that more, but trying to get that across the finish line with a matter of 12 legislative days to go. And I can't tell you how many times I've read this bill, okay? Probably in excess of 40 times, about 5 pages. Brought someone else in today, new set of eyes, looked at it, caught something that I had completely missed. And that just goes to show you that everyone is looking at things from a little bit different perspective. And so it's always good when we are willing to listen and work with other folks. So, look, I'm trying to give you a little snapshot of who I am and where I come from and what has motivated me. But where I'm from means so much. I want you to know that at the end of the day, that's what I talk about, kind of my upbringing. But like I said, I love my home. Number one, I love Calhoun County, but I love rural South Carolina. And I love the people that I'm able to represent. And quite frankly, that is one of the biggest reasons I chose to do what I'm doing now, which is run for the House of Representatives 9 years ago. And just thankfully we're elected then. But working for my friends and neighbors, trying to make our state, our communities a better place, trying to make a life for my two sons, your children, your grandchildren, that is really what motivates me. That truly, I know this always seems cliche, but I enjoy solving problems. I enjoy trying to come up with solutions that can make things better for everyone across the board. And I don't think that's always been the way it's been here in South Carolina, obviously. And it's hard and it's frustrating right now because a lot of times I do feel like that I have some really good ideas, and a lot of my colleagues in the House Democratic Caucus have some really good ideas, and we just a lot of times get pushed to the wayside because of the way the numbers are. And it shouldn't be that way. And it's not always that way. There are times where bipartisanship makes it, to the top. You don't always get to see that, and it certainly doesn't always get celebrated. I do think that a lot of times, politics and the state and this country have gotten to a point where we punish people for trying to trying to work across the aisle. And that's not the way it should be. At the end of the day, we're all South Carolinians and we're all Americans. We have to pull together. We can't be divided into these groups with labels and simply say you're good or you're bad because of who you associate with. We've got to push back against that if we're going to continue to move forward. And I think that we can. We've got to have those checks and balances. That's why I do believe it's important that we're able to get some more Democrats elected, not only in the House, but also in the Senate. Because I don't think that imbalance of power where one party has total control over everything is good. And I would say that if Democrats were in control of everything. Because I think at the end of the day, human nature is kind of a flawed thing. We're all sinners. I believe that. And so there has to be those checks and balances in place so that individuals aren't allowed to run wild and kind of take over with a ridiculous amount of power. But that's kind of what we have now. So I'm going to continue to fight. I'm going to continue to offer myself for service. We're going to run a great campaign this year and hopefully get reelected. And we're going to continue to go to Columbia and talk about the things I hope that matter to you so that your life can continue to improve and so that the lives of my kids are able to improve as well. So with that, I'm going to shut up because again, like I said, tonight is more, I want to learn about what's important to you. I talked about public education and I'm going to continue to work on that. I think healthcare is something that is extremely important to our district and the folks that I represent in District 93, having that access first and foremost, but then being able to get that affordable care that is so necessary. As I've traveled across the district and had these public forums, we talked about things like utility rates, electricity rates. We talked about access to jobs, not only trying to get jobs, but also find people to do work, which is something that we're struggling with right now. So everything is on the table, but for it to work, I need to know what's important to you. So again, thank you all for being here. David, Charlotte in the back, thank y'all so much for the food. Love y'all with all my heart. Anybody that needs a good barbecue, Big D's is where to go. They always do a fantastic job. And Margaret and Ashley, can't thank y'all enough. Margaret is my girl, y'all. We met, gosh, I guess that was like 2 years ago, about 2.5 years ago. We did some work together on a campaign, and she's from Richmond. I don't know if she told y'all that. She didn't say that tonight because we over here in Lexington. But she's from the Hopkins area over in Lower Richland, over in Richland County. But we became fast friends, and she is a brilliant person with a brilliant political mind, but she is also one of the hardest workers I know. So I am very lucky to be able to work with her and her daughter Ashley and her entire team for all that they do. So thank y'all from the bottom of my heart. Now I am promised, like I said, I'm gonna shut up. So y'all let me know what's important to you. We'll do a microphone.
Anyone have?
We do have 2 online. And this goes to your focus on education. The first question about education was, how do we get teachers' salaries higher so we can attract better teachers to get our children a better education? And also, you being from a rural area, and Lexington has a lot of that as well, how do we get more money so that the country schools have the same opportunities as the city schools?
Oh, I don't know who asked that, but thank you from the bottom of my heart, because that's something I'm very passionate about. So the first part of the question, talk about raising teacher pay. And so I agree wholeheartedly. We've got a huge problem right now in the state. So it's not only about getting more teachers, we're losing teachers. All right, so this is a two-pronged approach or a two-pronged problem. We've got to be able to attract new teachers, but we also have to be able to retain the ones that we currently have in the system. Over the course of the last 3 years, South Carolina has seen more teachers leave the profession than at any other time during our history. So number one, we've got to stop the bleeding. And so we have been, Chris, increasing teacher pay over the course of about the last 3 years. And what we have passed in the House version of the budget this year, that I'm hoping the Senate will go along to, will raise the minimum starting salary of all of our teachers to $40,000 in this state. So that is a dramatic increase from where we were just 3 years ago. So that is a great thing. But let me just say, that's not the solution to the problem. It's just getting our teachers more money. That is a big part of it. Okay, number one, if we're going to attract people to go into teaching from our high schools right now, then we've got to show them that they can make a legitimately good income once they go into that profession. It is very hard to ask people to go spend 4 years in college to get certified to be a teacher and then say you're going to make $25,000, $28,000 a year. If you're one of our brightest students, you're going to go into a field that's going to be able to pay you a lot more. So we're trying to fix that part of the problem, but I can't tell you how many teachers that I talk to when their complaints and their tears have nothing to do with money. It's about the level of respect that they feel like they don't have in the state from policymakers or from students. And it's the amount of outside work that is being placed on them to simply try to do their jobs. And, it's scary when you think about it, because again, we're exacerbating the problem when we're losing these teachers. But at the end of the day, we've just got to start bringing teachers in and listening to them. We've got to stop acting like 65 to 70-year-old guys that haven't had anything to do with teaching or the educational profession in their entire lives are going to have every solution to our problems. But I see that. I see a lot of folks that think they got it all figured out without even talking to the people that it affects on a daily basis. But there's a lot, and we could literally talk for the next 2 hours about the issues and concerns that I have with public education. But the second part of the question was right on point as well. The disparities that we have in the state with educational funding. Chris and I went to Lexington 4. Okay, it's right here in Lexington County. And I remember getting on the bus my freshman year at Swansea, and we rode up to Lexington High School, play a baseball scrimmage. And I was like, man, what college? We didn't got lost. We've gone to a college, not a high school, to play this baseball game when we rolled up in there. And so, you know, from the athletic facilities to the school, and now we got River Bluff. I mean, I graduated high school in '96. And so now we've got River Bluff, who makes Lexington High School look obsolete and outdated. And we've done good things in Lexington before, but what I'm saying is that is just a small snapshot in one county. Now you take that statewide, there shouldn't be that much disparities in one single county, much less across the state. And so I have always said that when we use taxpayer dollars to attract industry like BMW or Boeing or all of these other large industries that are bringing that tax base into the state, our tax dollars are used to attract them, but their tax dollars are only going to support the schools in which they're located. So when BMW came, it's only affecting those Greenville schools. We're not getting any benefit from that in Lexington 4 or Calhoun or Orangeburg. And so I've long advocated for, you know, there being a tax base that is equally distributed across the state. There should be a baseline amount of money. There should be a baseline amount of money that goes to every school. I'm not trying to hurt the affluent districts. I'm not. I don't want to take anything away from them, but every school should have a minimal amount of money that they are allocated from the state, period, from all of those tax dollars that comes in from industry. And then we can work our way up. But you can't accept, I just, for the life of me, I don't understand how someone expects a kid that is born along the I-95 corridor to compete. You know, people love to say, well, everything's the same now. Everything's equal. No, it's not. It's simply not. And until we don't, you know, until we wake up and start trying to address those inequities, you know, things are still going to kind of lag behind for the state. And I'm a firm believer that a rising tide, you know, lifts all ships. And so I hope folks know that if you're in Greenville, but some of your tax dollars are going to help a kid that may be in Allendale or Bamberg, well, it's still going to help you as a whole. It's not just going to help that particular community. We all are progressing. So, you know, that funding component is key. We did just make some major changes to how we're funding that per pupil cost in South Carolina to kind of streamline it. You know, over the course of 30 or 40 years, people have kind of picked at the edges and made all of these different changes to a point where, you know, you almost have to have a doctor's degree to even try to understand what that formula looks like or means now. So I think that, you know, us trying to streamline it will be better so that we can at least understand where it's coming from and where it's going. I appreciate the person that asked that question.
My name is Manny Taylor. I just kind of piggyback on what the question he asked. What's the time that's been going on for the school district? Well, you had so much disparity with the lower schools than now that you do with the upper schools. Why hadn't something been done? Because it's a bad, to me, it's a bad eyesore on the state of South Carolina to have a school in South Carolina that is way below poverty. I mean, basically has nothing. And then you have schools that state of the art, you know, in the state of South Carolina as a whole. And it's been talked about. Even some of the counties, the states or whatever have to take over the schools because there's so much. So what my question is, when is anything gonna be done about it? Because this has been going on for a while with the lower schools having, this is poverty really.
No.
And the upper schools,
This is no new problem. You're exactly right. We've been dealing with this for a long time. When is it going to change? That's a great question. I can assure you that myself and there's others like myself that are going to continue to fight for that change. I think it's going to require some folks, you know, some changing of the guard. I really do think ultimately it's going to require that General Assembly and those policymakers looking a little bit different than it looks now. But you know, I think that's certainly possible. But you know, we certainly are going to have to do some things differently. we're making incremental steps. You know, we have consolidated a lot of districts, which I think has been a positive. We did that over in Orangeburg. It was not pleasant. You know, folks feel a connection to the school that they're from, and I get that. And the district that they're from. And so whenever you consolidate, there's always a fear that the high school that I'm from might ultimately have to close. But we've got to get away from looking at everything from our perspective and looking at things that, you know, truly what is in the best interest of the kid. And, you know, we've got to get out of the mindset that just because we've done things one way forever, that's the way we need to continue to do it. I truly, I just want to hit on that. You know, COVID has been devastating. COVID has been devastating, but no more so than any area than public education. You know, I can't tell you how concerned I am for our youngest students that were in, say, first, second, third grade when this thing hit. Because those are the most formative ages for any child to get that foundation of learning. You know, study after study shows that if you aren't reading on grade level by the third grade, then you will not catch up, or you will have a very, very hard time catching up, because all of the teaching from that point is then based around your ability to read. So can you imagine being a first, second, or third grader that lost out on all of that in-person instruction? And I'm not casting stones, because nobody knew what to do. Okay, there were no right answers. There were just a bunch of wrong answers over the course of the last 2.5 years with regards to how we addressed the COVID pandemic. All I do know is that we're going to have to work extra hard to try to get some of these younger kids caught up. Or we're going to have, I don't know how many students that are going to continue to go through the system with problems. And so, you know, we're going to have to look at maybe doing some things like going to school longer. You know, and I bring this up, and sometimes people get really angry when I start talking about year-round school. But that is a model that has worked in other places very well. Now, if it's going to work, it takes everybody getting in a room and figuring out what makes sense and what doesn't, because you got to work with parents, right? That might have a job, it might be working, but we have got to get these kids in the classroom and keep them in the classroom. You know, going home for the summer for 2.5 months and then losing that retention or not being able to retain what you just learned and then coming back and having to start over, it's just not working. So we've got to continue to think outside of the box. But you're right, not a big problem with funding inequities across the state. So I hope that, you know, by doing this, truly trying to focus on folks that want to prioritize that. We've got a big superintendent. Let me just say, you get me off on this tangent, and I start thinking about all kind of other things. But this superintendent of education race that is going to be decided this year is going to be monumental. So if public education is something that is important to you, like it is to me, please pay attention to that race, because it will be, in my opinion, a referendum on public education versus private school and private school vouchers. You will have a candidate whose number one priority is to institute education savings accounts, which is a new fancy way to say vouchers. They will be advocating to take public dollars away from public schools and give them to families that want to send their kids to private schools. I will never say anything bad about a private school. I think every parent should be able to make a decision that they feel like they need to make for their kid. And if that is sending their child to a private school, then do it. More power to you. You just don't need to use public dollars to do it. Our public dollars need to stay in our public schools to try to get them to where they need to be. I will fight to the very end to make sure that continues, but it will be a fight, and it is a fight that is starting now in the House and the Senate. But the true fight, I think, ultimately, we've got to be very, very cognizant of who is going to be on that ballot for superintendent of education. Because if someone comes in there and is able to get that position and then advocate from a position of power, that we should go somewhere different, because that's what they want to say. Well, we just keep trying to do the same thing in South Carolina, and it's not working, so we got to try something different. And they're going to use buzzwords that say, you know, parents know what's best for their kids, and you got to give parents the choice, the option to do what they need to do. And at the end of the day, it's just trying to, it's all about money. Because every issue that we ever talk about at some point might make a lot of twists and turns. It comes back to money. I learned that on the farm too. And so we just got to watch where those dollars are ultimately going. We've got scenarios where it's been tried. People have, you know, basically they've been using it for their own personal good. And so just keep an eye on that. Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry, I'm gonna let Margaret pick so I don't get in trouble.
Supposed to go. Okay, thank you. Good evening, Representative Bond.
Yes, sir.
My name is Kenny Benson.
Thank you.
Hey, how you doing? Here representing the community, even though I don't live here now. I grew up here. And also representing Hayward Haven Church. Just want to touch on disparities and inequities. I grew up across the street here on Gardner's Terrace Road. That community is an older community, a beautiful community of all races, creeds, and colors. Beautiful. But what we have now, Representative Odd, is we have a trailer depot. I think it's trailers from Home Depot coming through a residential area. Now, my brothers and sisters, I'm sure most communities would not allow that. Could you possibly look into what is going on there? See if there's another way that they can enter instead of coming down a road that is in a community where people live, walk the roads every day.
I can absolutely do that, Kenny.
But we've got these huge trailers coming in, and it's really nice. That was one thing I wanted to bring to your attention. The other thing is when you talk about infrastructure, I don't know what kind of monies are coming in for our communities, but when I look at my friends in Pine Ridge, we have 2 ballparks in less than a half a mile away from each other. Really nice structures. I think that's Pine Ridge. Somebody can help me, Pine Ridge. What's the name of the road? Pine Ridge Road?
Right by.
Right here, by the bridge. Yes, sir.
Oh, Bray Park?
No, you also have Bray Park right here.
Yeah. Okay.
I guess what I'm saying is, we've got these structures coming in, but when you look at the communities of color, we don't have anything. Gardner's Terrace Road is a beautiful road. You have bikers utilizing that road almost every day, especially during the summer. They love riding the road, but there's nothing going on. You know, something as simple as sidewalks would be beneficial. And what else? I think that's it. And I know that may seem a little selfish, but you're in our neck of the woods. So I have to present the issues that are of concern to us. But if you could please look into the Home Depot situation.
No, I certainly will.
We sure would
Kenny,
appreciate it.
and you know, that's why it's important to try to build those relationships from not only the state level down to the local government level. Because a lot of those issues can be alleviated by working with town councils or county councils. But yeah, at the end of the day, we just gotta work with DOT in that particular issue, or that particular situation. And, if we need to close a road down to a, through traffic of trucks, and we've done that in other places before. So I don't nobody ever wants to slow down commerce. But at the end of the day, we've gotta have it where it makes sense. And so, by the way, thanks for your church and what they provide in that area with their park. That's a big deal, so I look forward to continuing to work with you on that project. But you're right. I mean, I'm a firm believer that, look, we're reading a lot about violence in our communities right now. We've had 2 horrific shootings in the state over the course of the last 3 days. That, we can talk about a lot of different issues associated with that. But I am still a firm believer that you have to give young people something to do. I'm a firm believer that, if they don't have something productive and positive to be involved with, then unfortunately, sometimes, and I'm saying that because I know how I was, okay? If I wasn't busy doing something productive and positive, sometimes then that's when I would go and look for things that weren't so productive and weren't so positive. And so we've got to have facilities, but we also have to have programs that can attract folks and attract young people of all demographics, of all walks of life, and all backgrounds, so that we can provide them something. Thank you, Ken. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Sean Grover, and I just wanted to get your thoughts on what you see happening in terms of the restricting of voting practices.
Yeah, it has been a huge concern. It's been a huge concern. And I absolutely believe that it was, again, it's all about those semantics, right? It's kind of like what I was talking about versus private dollars. If you just listen to some folks, then all they're trying to do is make the election process safe and ensure that there's no fraud, or that only the people that are eligible to vote are the ones that are voting. And so that's only why they want these audits, just to make sure that everything is the way it's supposed to be, right? I do believe that at the end of the day, that it is a concerted effort by some to restrict the vote, to try to make it harder on certain individuals, certain demographics to get access to the polls. I think that there are absolutely people that that's their job, that they go day to day trying to come up with different ideas that can be pushed through different associations and groups across the country and different associations. And then you have legislators that see this type of model legislation, and it might start in some place like Arizona. But then someone here in South Carolina says, you know what? I think that sounds really good to my constituents. And, I got a tough primary coming up. I got to show people just how strong and just how far to the ideological right that I might be. And so I'm going to introduce this legislation. And so that's how things like that get started. But nevertheless, I do think that unfortunately there has been an attempt. I think this started all the way back, quite frankly, with the election of President Obama. That got a lot of people really angry that he won that race in 2008. And ever since, there has been efforts to try to make it harder on certain people to vote. And I think that that's very unfortunate. I think that that's never going to end. There's always going to be people out there that are trying to do that. I think that a lot of us also have to try to put up reasons why that shouldn't be allowed to pass, but then we also have to do things that I think make sense to voters, right? And so, we voted on, and we can't be afraid to say when things make sense either. So I served on the House Oversight Committee that dealt with the Elections Commission this year. And I worked very closely with Ms. Lantee, with the League of Women Voters, on trying to restructure, our election commission and ultimately those election laws. I think some of what we did this year in the House makes sense. I was okay with the trade-off of getting that no excuse early voting. I was okay with getting an extended period or a set period of time that folks can go and vote early, in exchange for some of the time that I think, folks can mail in that absentee ballot. But, we still have to have that ability to have folks that can mail in that absentee ballot. And when you start putting, ridiculous things on there, like, some of the stuff surrounding the signatures, we just gotta be realistic. I mean, if someone is gonna forge a signature, they're gonna forge a signature. And so, but thankfully, we haven't seen any widespread activity of that. I mean, I don't know who these people are that certain people assert are going out there. Like, I wish I had that much time, to go out there and be able to collect all of these faulty or illegal ballots that they're saying that people are harvesting. But just so you know, I mean, like I said, there are ideas out there that do make sense. I thought that it would be a great idea this year, because everywhere I go, whether you're a Democrat or whether you're a Republican, most people always tell me that we should do away with straight ticket voting. Do away with it. Make people go in there and learn about their candidates. Don't make it so easy for folks just to go in and push one button and then walk out. And I've heard a lot of my Republican colleagues say, yeah, that's a great idea. Make people go in there and know what they're doing. Well, guess what? I put up that amendment this year and it got shot down faster than anything you've ever seen. Okay? I mean, I have a lot of Democrats that voted against it as well. And that's what we're up against. You know what I mean? It's a lot of that self-serving mentality that people will say one thing and say they're for it. But then when it comes right down to it, they kind of like the way the system is set up. So I'm all for, we were talking earlier about the primary process. And I think it's ridiculous. Please, I'm sorry. But she lives in West Columbia. Tell me your name, you might not know.
Macaulay.
Right. So we were talking, she has her representative right now. We're not going to name names, and y'all are the same way, right? In Chapin. So the bottom line is, y'all have a primary that is being run, a Republican primary for your state house representatives. Republican. No Democrats have filed in either of those races, right? So now you're faced with the decision. Do I jump over and vote in a Republican primary and choose who I think the best person is going to be my state house representative? Or do I forego that and vote in the Democratic primary, where I have no local elections, no local options, but then I could go and vote for the Democrats that are running against each other for, say, superintendent of education or governor? You shouldn't have to make that choice. You should be able to go down that ballot, and if I want to vote in the, you should have, say, if I want to vote in the Democratic portion for governor, you should be able to do that, and then you should be able to come down that ballot. And if you don't have a Democratic primary, then you should be able to go over and cast a ballot for whoever's running in that Republican. So you have a choice on who your representative is going to be. But, then we heard that, well, they're just, people will take advantage of that. And they're going to go over there and they're going to vote for the worst person to try to sabotage the race for the legitimate candidate and just stuff like that. And I just, I think that's pretty sad when that is the position people think of South Carolinians. The vast majority of people would be willing to go in and cast a ballot for someone that they didn't like to try to sabotage someone else. We gotta make voting easy. Period. At the end of the day, when only such a small percentage of folks. I'm gonna go back and talk about how we make changes in public education. Get people that are involved in public education to go to the polls and vote, because it's bad that so few people participate in our elections. I'm a strong believer that if everyone participated, if we got everyone out to those polls in those November elections to actually vote, then the state's elected officials would look a lot different than they currently look. But unfortunately, we have a hard time getting people to go to the polls. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Sandra Ray. I'm with the South Carolina Democratic Party's Education Caucus.
Yes, ma'am.
And we are sponsoring a forum on May 17th that will have the superintendents of, the candidates for superintendent of education running and speaking to us. So check the Democratic webpage and you'll find out, you can sign up to attend. But going back to education, one, I think the most important things that we can do is small class size. Because the issue is that the teachers just have way too much to do.
Yep.
That's all they're doing is running around handling administrative stuff. And so to me, if you want kids to be able to read, you need to be able to sit down and read with them. And we can't do that anymore. And the second issue I would like to bring to your attention is the issue of special education. You know, we are not providing specialized programs for kids with special needs. We are merging all the kids together in the same classroom, regardless of their needs. So you'll have kids with autism with kids with learning disabilities. They're very different kids to teach. That and the fact that special education programs have old curriculum. We are not given the same curriculum options for our children that the rest of the school has. So reading programs, math programs, my kids don't get those textbooks.
Amen.
And that is an equity difference that makes a difference in terms of us ultimately getting our kids out of special education. Thank you.
You're so right, Sandra, and you know, that's the problem when you're losing teachers, right? That goes back to that retention issue that I was talking about. So if I've got X number of students, but my teacher population continues to decline, that only makes my classroom population go up. And it's virtually impossible. You just can't do it, but there's no other, and you know, we can't expect our teachers to continue to do that without burning out. And so that's why whatever we have to do to try to retain and attract new teachers, we have to do it. Because we are at that point right now. We are at a breaking point in this state. I think a lot of people want it to break. That's what my concern is that there are people that are actively wanting our system to break so that they can point to what they think is the solution, like private school vouchers. That is what is so scary. But nevertheless, you know, we have to, you know, highlight that. We gotta work with our administrators. I think we are way too top heavy in administration in a lot of our districts across the state, and money that we are allocating to our schools don't actually make it even in the classroom. So, yeah, I'd love to talk with you more so that I can get some better ideas of what would make your job easier. But thank you for being a teacher.
Good evening.
Hey, yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I'm Angeline Smith, and I live right there on Low Water Road.
Yes, ma'am.
And my concern is we have a lot of new development coming from 12th Street Extension with Nevron and also Amazon.
Yes, ma'am.
And 12th Street Extension extends to Old Water Road. On Old Water Road, we have lots of issues there. Whenever Amazon came, especially during the holidays, when you come to 176 highway, it's traffic just backed up for miles. And people living in that area, we don't even have a red light out there. We have 2 lanes. We don't even have a turn lane. So it's a real issue. So is there any kind of plans to fix that area?
Yes, ma'am, there is. And thank you so much for bringing that up. You're exactly right. And I remember, you know, there were some times in there where folks were getting off on that exit coming down, hitting Old Wire Road.
Yes.
And I don't know how y'all dealt with it. You probably couldn't even get out onto the road a lot of times.
That's exactly right. Sometimes it takes 30 minutes to 45 minutes just to cross over Old Wire Road. I live on the opposite side. And another thing too, since Amazon is down there, a lot of times those big 18-wheelers turns there, and sometimes it's not enough space for them to make that wide turn onto Old Wire Road. And a lot of times you have to come almost to this side on the other side of the shoulders to be able to let the truck pass.
Yes, ma'am.
So are there plans to start get that fixed?
There are some plans in place. So the end goal ultimately is to pave the 12th Street extension and take it all the way out to 176 on the Calhoun County side of I-26, if that makes sense to you. You know, right now, it runs into that traffic circle,
Right.
and that's it. So what is going on right there, and I've been working with Calhoun County, is we have that area, that whole area, number one, has to increase its sewer capacity. Because we are pretty much out of capacity in that area because of the development and the increased expansion in commercial activity. So we've got to get a line to run to Casey, where they can take the wastewater and increase the capacity. So we've got to get that wastewater treatment line down first. And then we're waiting on DOT to make improvements to that whole exit off of I-26 and then pave 12th Street all the way to Highway 176. So the hope there is that people won't have to take Old Wire Road off of 12th Street to get back around to the interstate, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah.
So that should alleviate. Now, the problem is, you know, the question is time. How much longer do you have to wait on that before it's going to happen? And I can't give you a good time frame of when it's going to be completed, but that is the overall plan. But in the meantime, I definitely would love to work with y'all and try to figure out, is there other things that we can do to try to mitigate, you know, all of that traffic that y'all have been having to deal with. Because maybe there needs to be a stoplight at the end of Old Wire Road and 176 to help people get out and stop that traffic. I don't know, but I'm willing to take a look and bring any of it to DOT to try to come up with some. Is it still as bad now as it was?
It's really bad during the holidays. Sometimes traffic backs up on Interstate 26.
Yeah.
All that traffic comes off and comes up 176.
Yes, ma'am.
Still have a problem.
Yeah, that's the smartphones, right? You know, because we're dealing with it there, because I live right off the interstate as well. And so whenever there's a wreck, there's other things that are in place. You know, we haven't even talked about all of the ARPA money that is coming down from the federal government, but one of our plans, you know where I-26 right now comes together from 3 lanes down to 2, right? So if you ever are traveling that way, it is awful. It's a bottleneck. And so, you know, a lot of times there's not even an accident and traffic will get really backed up right there in that area. And so anyway, you know, for that stretch from there all the way to Orangeburg, the plan is to widen that to 3 lanes also. And we're going to use that ARPA money to accelerate that project so that we can cut it down to, I think, about the next 3 years, we should have that section opened up. And so hopefully that's going to help with the traffic flow in that area also, so that it isn't backing up and it's spilling off of, spilling onto these secondary roads. Hopefully we'll be able to keep at least 1 lane open on the interstate when these accidents do occur and keep the traffic flowing. But you are in a high growth area. There's no doubt about that. And that's where that planning comes into play. So, you know, the jobs that Amazon and Nephron are bringing, that's fantastic. But we have to make it fit into the landscape and the folks that were already there in the first place that had their homes. We've got to do that with as minimal impact as we possibly can. Yes, ma'am.
Are there any plans to widen Old Wire Road?
Not that I'm aware of, but I will find out.
Oh, okay.
I will find out.
And
Is that
also,
something that obviously people would want?
not for sure, but with all the traffic and everything that comes from 321 and take the cut through, I mean, it's just a lot of traffic and it's really just sometimes really, really bad.
Yes, ma'am. And with that additional traffic, you got to keep it up. So I'm sure that it's probably falling apart with the heavy truck traffic that it receives.
Yeah. The potholes is just
Potholes,
terrible.
yeah.
About every month we have this pothole.
Yeah. That's right, yeah. I'm trying to think, that area, that Charles Hill, that area opens up on the old fire road, is that correct? Well, just that, the area, residential area, off of Old Wire, how many ingress, egress, how many access points off of Old Wire Road are there?
Yeah, well, you come from 321 and you can, take a cut through from Old Wire Road, and then they come that way, you get 77.
Yes, ma'am.
And so there's a lot of traffic coming through.
Yeah. For most people, there's all kind of different things, but let me just work on some solutions to try to figure out if we can work on that problem. Yes, ma'am.
After this young lady, we have 2 more questions, and we're going to wind it down, but I want to say thank you on behalf of Representative Hunt. We're going to hear from the young lady here, and then our past president of Lexington County, and the young lady over there, that's going to be it, but we will be back.
I can stay as long as y'all want me to
Yeah,
stay.
you
too.
stay afterwards, but I'm going to go rich.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, my name is Pamela Greenlaw, and I'm in West Columbia. I've been in Lexington County for 6 years. And I'm very excited about what Lexington Democratic Party is trying to do here. Anyway, this is related to rural areas and development. It's kind of a two-pronged question. It's about attracting and supporting non-polluting businesses, particularly small businesses in rural areas. Rural areas are usually zoned for industrial, corporate's fine in terms of, I know you discussed some of these problems here, but when we start giving away tax money or tax breaks to polluting industries, then we're creating environmental justice communities. I wonder if you have a vision for a solution for that, or some advice or comments.
I think my vision starts, thank you for that question, and you're exactly right. Bottom line is, our population continues to grow. Business and industry will continue to locate here, that is a good thing. But we have to be mindful of the impact that we're having on our environment. At the end of the day, we only get one planet. And, talking about what we said earlier, I want to make sure that my kids and grandkids enjoy it just as much, if not better, than I did. So I think it starts with transparency. I think that we have to demand transparency from entities like South Carolina Department of Commerce, who is really tasked in this state with going out and attracting businesses and industries. We have to incentivize green industry and clean industry to come and locate here. But, we've got to make sure that the folks that are giving our taxpayer dollars away as incentives to attract these industries aren't doing it, just throwing them at businesses without taking into consideration the impact that they're going to have on our environment. I think that's ultimately where it starts, is just having that transparency in place so that people know the types of decisions that are being made. Randy.
Hello. For the past 15 years, maybe longer, I've been watching small hospitals in South Carolina shut down, especially in rural areas. I hear Medicaid would help to keep those open. My father had a heart attack, took him an hour to get to a hospital. Is there anything that's being done or can be done to give, especially in rural areas, to give better access? The big hospital chains are building, but they're building in urban areas. They're popping up all over Columbia and nowhere else.
They're building where the customer base is.
Yeah, which is understandable, but that doesn't meet our needs.
It's a great question, Randy. That's why healthcare continues to be a huge issue. I mean, look, we are going to always have to keep a laser focus on healthcare in this state. We're going to always have an aging population. Quite frankly, we are attractive to a population across the country that wants to come and retire here, which is great, but it does put additional stresses on our healthcare communities. what I see is a lot of times those retirees are coming to more urbanized areas, and that's great. And we have fantastic facilities like MUSC and Prisma and some of these densely populated areas. But for me in Calhoun County, I don't, St. Matthews, North, these types of places that I represent, it's tough. And you're not gonna really be able to attract a lot of physicians to these areas. So listen, we gotta do a lot of different things. Number one, we should have accepted Medicaid expansion. If not for that becoming a political issue and Nikki Haley wanting to tout her, or thump her chest and use that as a trampoline to other higher office for herself, we would have. It was a mistake for us not to accept it, and we left a lot of people in the wake of that decision that would have been Medicaid eligible that aren't. Now, I'll say this, we've got a great director over at the Department of Health and Human Services right now, Robbie Kerr. He is fantastic. He is doing as much as he possibly can to try to promote Medicaid expansion and get that's the whole thing. We want to expand Medicaid, right? But we've got to also make sure that those of us that are eligible, or those folks in South Carolina that are currently eligible for Medicaid, we got to get them signed up. And there are a lot of folks across the state that are eligible for Medicaid right now that aren't even signed up. So that goes to that type of education, that type of promotion, getting that out there to folks and letting them know that it's available. We've got big issues on the horizon, certificate of need. I don't know if anyone in this room has heard of that terminology, but we've got, we've had a policy in place for a very long time that says before a healthcare provider can locate somewhere, that they have to go through a DHEC process to show that they are needed in that particular area. The point is, you don't want oversaturation of services that then runs some providers out of business. That makes sense. You've got to focus on your indigent care, but at the same time, I want to foster competition. I want to try to make a hospital that might be in Orangeburg, the regional medical center. I don't want them to think that they don't ever have to worry about competition, so they can just do whatever they want to do. There's got to be that balance in there, but we can't lose our rural hospitals, but we also can do things that, again, are innovative and outside of the box. I think that we can take advantage of our pharmacists a lot more than we are currently taking advantage of our pharmacists. So that's why I was talking about earlier, I'm going to continue to push for this legislation that says you don't have to go to a doctor and get a prescription to get contraceptives. You can go straight to your pharmacy and get them to distribute it to you there. They can do the same type of questionnaires. They do the blood pressure. They can go through those screens to know whether it works for you or it doesn't work for you. A 21-year-old or a 22-year-old that, may not really have a primary care doctor shouldn't have to make a decision to go without contraceptives because they can't get to a doctor to get that prescription. They should be able to go into that pharmacy wherever they're located. We do it for things like vaccinations. If a pharmacist can give a vaccine, then we got to take advantage of what we have in our communities and then try to grow that out. Thanks, Randy. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Brenda Jones. I am a member of Greater St. Paul Lutheran Church, and it's located on Old White Road. To kind of piggyback off of what Angeline said, are there any immediate plans to improve Old White Road?
Not that I'm aware of, but I'm going to get the answers to that. And so if that means that we need to all meet out there and take a look at exactly what those problems are, then that's what we'll do. And then we'll find out. My first phone call tomorrow morning, I promise you, is going to be the DOT.
There's a lot of potholes, a lot of wear and tear to your vehicle.
Well, I'm going to find out what we've got in the works. And if it's not anything, then we're going to get them out there and we're going to make sure that those folks understand what we all are dealing with in that particular area. We're going to get a plan to address it. I can assure you of that.
Also, my family is located off of Charleston Highway, right here where exit 119 is.
Yes.
So they are getting ready to, we met with DOT last Thursday, so they are getting ready to do some improvements improvements to Charleston Highway. So I'm not sure, I'm sure it's probably gonna go up to that area, where, Old White Road is. So, they're starting to do some improvements. In fact, they're gonna close that, exit off right at 119. So they are gonna start.
That's right, and that was part of that project that I was talking about earlier, which is going to extend 12th Street all the way out to 176. You know, DOT, they gotta get that intersection, that interchange off of the interstate. That work needs to be completed before they can, you know, move forward with paving of that dirt section between, Left Run and 176.
And also with, Mr. Benson over here, I agree with him. We don't have any nice parks or anything in our communities, for our young people to enjoy. And I know at one point, they talked about a community center in the Dixon area, but I'm not sure what happened to that.
Yes, ma'am. Well, you know, again, that goes to our inequities. With a lot of money sometimes being spent in different places. You know, I tell you, I went up, and I'm not trying to make it feel any worse. It frustrates me, okay? But man, you know, we gotta implore, you know, the Lexington County Recreation Department. We've got to implore Calhoun County Recreation Department that we have to spread our resources to all parts of the county. And so I love the fact that my boys got to go play on a brand new field of football, flag football, you know, that was up there by the country club. That was great for them. But we've got to provide those opportunities in places like Dixiana. And I'm glad that Calhoun County is going to be building a new recreational facility right outside of St. Matthews. Fantastic. But we've got to make sure that we've got those opportunities up in Sandy Run also, and in Canton. So, yes, man, everybody needs to get their fair share.
On behalf of Representative Ott, we would like to say thank you, and especially I'd like to say thank you to Lexington County Democratic Party for putting off your meeting so that we can spend some time in your community tonight. So again, I just want to say thank you. And at this time, we're going to hear from Lexington County President.
Thank y'all so much. Appreciate y'all.
And I'm not gonna keep you long. If we haven't met, please meet me, Chris McCurry, the new chair of the Lexington Democratic Party. I know some of you through Zoom, and that's about as much as I know of you. Some of you, like Chris, I've known for years, and Randy. So if you haven't met me, please, if you're in Lexington County, get in touch before you leave. I've got a few cards, and I want you to get out and in contact with me so we can get in regular communication. And we do need to come out and support Representative Ott and Senator Setzler as our two main elected officials in Lexington County. We need to support them as much as we can, and that's why I told Representative Ott it was a no-brainer when his town hall was gonna fall on our monthly meeting. No, we weren't gonna do that. We were gonna come support him. He has supported us. So thank you so much.
Thank you.